Hey friend, a quick update for you. My website is officially live. I'm so excited. You can check it out at reneemat.com. And my name is spelled a little bit different, so people get hung up on it sometimes, but it's Renae. And I'll make sure the link is in the show notes in case you need to just click that and get to the website. But this website is where you're going to find all the things that I talk about here on the podcast. Plus, I've officially opened the wait list for my upcoming course. So, if you've been wanting some extra support to finally get those 5 foundational routines working for real life, you'll definitely want to get on that list so that you are the first to know when doors open. The new website is going to be your go to spot to learn more about me, check out those resources I mentioned on the podcast, and get that support if you're ready to create routines and systems that actually work for real life. So when you're done listening, head to reneemat.com, take a look around, pop your name on that wait list. I cannot wait for you to see it. Have you ever looked at the pile of mason jars and wondered if there is a way that you could use them instead of letting them continue to clutter your shelf? Today is your lucky day because we are talking about mason jars. Mason jars can be used in a variety of ways, but today we're actually going to be talking about how you can utilize them in your meal planning routine. You probably have a bunch on hand already, and even if you don't, you're likely going to come across some nice jars next time you're making pasta or eating pickles or anything else that comes in a jar. So let's get to 7 ways to utilize mason jars in your meal planning routine. Are you ready to stop the chaos, the stress, the overwhelm that's filling your life? I'm Renae Matt, and together you and I are going to build simple routines that are going to change your life. When you put these habits into practice, you're going to be able to organize your life in a way where you can be there for your family, pay off your debt, save money, your house can stay organized, you don't have to stress about what's for dinner, and you still get time for yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the Routine Advantage Podcast. So, this episode is a little bit different than normal because we're not talking about the actual routine itself. We're talking about something that you can utilize in your routine. And it is something as basic as glass jars. Now, when we're talking about something like jars, we do have to be careful, first of all, because if we are saving every single jar we come across, then that is going to cause an issue in our clutter. So we do want to be very selective on what we're keeping and make sure that we have a purpose for these jars. If you don't typically do like a bunch of canning, then you probably don't need a ton of jars on hand. But if you are being selective about where you are keeping these jars and what you're using them for, and you're not just hoarding a bunch of glass jars, then we're okay. But just make sure that you're aware of this and you kind of keep this habit in check so that you don't end up creating more clutter by trying to keep jars. So I just want to say that right away is just be aware of your jar intake. So, we're going to start by just kind of talking about why I'm even focusing on mason jars in the first place. So, number one, they are glass, so they are non toxic. That is a huge thing, especially right now where we see a big trend in trying to get rid of the toxins in our foods and what we're eating and what we're being surrounded by. So, using glass is a really great option. And glass jars tend to be something that we come across pretty often that we can utilize. They are also multifunctional. You can store liquids in them, you can store dry goods, you can put them in the freezer, you can put them in the pantry. Like, there are so many uses that you can have with glass jars, not even just in the kitchen, but anywhere throughout your home. So there are a lot of really good uses for glass jars. And another reason is that they are easy to find. You come across glass jars probably more often than you realize. And even if we don't want to purchase a bunch of jars, we're probably going to be coming across jars that we can reuse, especially if they have a lid where we can either reuse the lid. And I like using the ones that have no branding on them. That's my preference. I want nice, clean, sleek jars that have no branding on the lids. Or you can even actually purchase lids outside of what comes standard. You just have to make sure that it is the type of top that fits well. So just be careful with that. But we can reuse a lot of the jars that we do come across. So they're very easy to get our hands on. And then, like I said, there are going to be many ways that you can use them. So we're going to talk about 7 ways that you can use them in your meal planning routine to not only make it useful, but also make meal planning easier because that is always a benefit. All right, so number 1 is you can use them for dry goods in your pantry so that you know when to restock because glass jars are clear. So when you are using them for things like rice or oatmeal or quinoa or anything like that, you can just pour them in there. You can seal them up so they are airtight. And it also looks kind of pretty as you have them in your pantry. But not only that, when you are writing out your grocery list, you can just take a quick look. You don't have to open any canisters or anything like that. You can take a quick look and see exactly how much you have in each of your jars and know if you need to purchase anything to restock your supplies. So that is a really great use of those and to make things easier. My sister did this and I thought it was so genius. I was at her house and she was making her kids some oatmeal and I'm like, I don't know why I've never thought of this before, but she had it labeled that it was her oatmeal and then just directions on how to cook the oatmeal so that if her like older girls, around like 8 and 10, and if they are going to be making any oatmeal, then they have the instructions. But then if she's just kind of running through and trying to be really quick, she doesn't have to go look up how to make oatmeal to try and remember or anything like that. Just to simplify the process, she has the instructions written on a label, just right on the container. So I think that is a really great way to do this. So you could do that for oatmeal, rice, quinoa, especially if you have kids that are learning how to cook. Just put the instructions right on there on how to make basic rice or how to make basic quinoa. And you have it on there, you have it labeled, and everything is good to go. And it just simplifies everything. So I think that's a great idea. And if you don't have a label maker, then use masking tape and just plug it on there. So makes it super easy. Number 2 is use jars for prepped produce to help make it last. Now, you guys know that I absolutely love my produce prep containers, and I do have them listed on the website. They are at reneemat.com. You can go and see just kind of my favorites list of things that I like using, but I love using produce prep containers. However, they can be kind of pricey, especially if we are trying to budget and not spend as much. So, jars are a great alternative to keep your produce fresh. So, there are many ways that you can utilize this in this way. And I just wrote down a few just to give you some ideas. So, number 1, you can store berries in glass jars and make your berries last longer. So, you can wash them, you can dry them, and then put them right in jars and seal them up, and they will last way longer than if you just keep them in the fridge in their containers that you get from the store. Another way is to cut up any veggie sticks like celery and carrot sticks and things like that. You can plop them in jars. You can put cold water in there to keep them even longer. Some people will put, a little bit of like a ranch dressing or hummus at the bottom of the jar and then stick the sticks in. So then you've got kind of a veggies and dip right away. And you can just pull them out when you're needing a snack or you want to like have a snack in the car on the drive somewhere, something like that. It makes it really easy to do that, but you can just store your veggies directly in the jars as well. You could also chop up a bunch of lettuce and have that on hand for the week. And you can also utilize it for other produce throughout the week that you're prepping as soon as you get home from the grocery store. So, kind of the process that I go through is when you get home, you wash all your veggies and then you chop everything and you store them, and you can utilize jars for this process as well. And even if you don't have time to do the produce prep that I really encourage for a meal planning routine, you could also do something like a chop once method, where maybe you're not doing it all right away when you get home from the grocery store, but you do it throughout the week. So let's say you are making a dish on Monday night that needs onions and you want to chop up onions, but you kind of look ahead and you have several meals this week that are going to utilize chopped onions. So instead of waiting and then chopping onions every single night, what you're doing is you're just chopping once. So you just grab a bunch of onions and you chop them all at one time because you're already making the mess. You just take a few extra minutes and chop extra. And then you put all of those extra chopped onions in a mason jar and store them in the fridge. And then every time you go to cook, all you have to do is sprinkle out some of those chopped onions, use them in your cooking, and you are good to go. So that is a really great way to utilize a chop once method if you don't have time or energy to be doing your produce prep right when you get home from the grocery store. So start to think about different ways that you can do that and you can utilize jars during that process. So another idea with this kind of concept is to utilize it for different mixes as well. So we love doing onions and peppers and like sweet potatoes or like a butternut squash and chop those into small dices and put those in glass jars. Because then, as we're making like a breakfast hash or anything like that, we can just sprinkle that out. You could also do it for a mix of, I'm going to totally butcher this name, but it's called, I believe it's pronounced mirepoix. And it is basically just a flavor base of celery, carrots, and onions. And you just chop those up and dice them into like small little diced pieces. And then you mix them and throw them into a mason jar. And then you don't have to chop these things every single time you go to cook. It's already done for you. So by putting it in a jar, it makes it last a lot longer. And then you just sprinkle those things in as you are sauteing something up, or you're making a soup, or you're making some sort of meal that utilizes some of these vegetables. It just makes it so much easier and less stressful when it comes time to cook. And then you're really only doing that chopping once and then you're good to go for the week. So I love doing these things. Tip number three is to use the jars to prep easy breakfasts. So, again, we're doing as much as we can one time and then making it last throughout the week. And jars are a great way to do this because you can store them and they stay good for quite some time because they're airtight. So you could do things like yogurt parfaits, so where you put a base of yogurt in and then you put in some fresh berries or even frozen berries on top. And then in another jar in the pantry, you could even store some fresh granola. Even if it's homemade, that's a great way to do it is to store it in a mason jar and it'll stay fresh and crunchy in that jar. And then you can just top that for yogurt parfaits for the week. You could do overnight oats. You could even put like your smoothie mixes and just combine, some spinach and fruit and everything in there and then just dump the jar right into your blender when it's time to do a smoothie mix. So there are so many options on ways to do easy breakfasts in jars. The fourth tip is to do this same type of thing for lunches. So have prepped grab and go meals available for the week. So again, you're making it once and you have them all throughout the week for either yourself or even people in your family. So these could be meals that you're making at home or that you are taking on the go. So it could be something like a salad where you layer it and you put like the dressing on the bottom and then you put in your veggies and then you put in your lettuce on the top and you kind of stuff it all in. And then you can either mix it up right in the jar or you can dump it into a bowl and have a really quick, fresh salad ready to go all week long. You could also do something like burrito bowls where you're putting like the tomatoes and the lime juice and like chipotle peppers and stuff like that on the bottom. And then you're layering in corn and black beans and then your rice and cooked chicken. And then you can either put the lettuce on top or if you want to keep it on the side so you can reheat everything, that is also an option. And then store your lettuce in a mason jar on the side. Like that's a great idea to do that. But there are so many meals for mason jars. Just do a quick Google search for different types of meals that you like. I've seen jars where they're doing like ramen jars where you're making like this homemade ramen with pastas and things like that, where you can just dump it out and you're good to go. And it just makes life so much easier to cook things homemade, but have them prepped so you don't feel like you're cooking all the time. Tip number five is to do quick pickling and even some sides to enhance meals throughout the week. So, this might be something like do a quick pickled cucumber or a quick pickled red onion, or even add up some like chopped cabbage and do a quick coleslaw dressing, store these all in mason jars, and then you can add them to different meals throughout the week. So maybe you've got those pickled cucumbers and pickled red onions for burrito bowls or sandwiches, or you've got that quick coleslaw for a side dish, or even to top it onto some like pulled pork sandwiches along with the pickled red cucumbers. Like there are so many different things that you can do that are really quick and easy, and they store really well in these glass jars. Tip number 6 is to make homemade dressings that will last for at least a week or two. And I love using this option and then having the pourable mason jar lids. Again, you can go to reneemat.com and see my favorites list. I have some that we absolutely love that are really easy to use, and they are just pourable lids that are on wide mouth mason jars. And I think you can get them for regular mouth mason jars too. I think at that same link, but basically you just have these lids that allow you to pour out liquids or things like that out of these mason jars. So it makes it really easy to mix up some good solid homemade dressings and then have it in the fridge. So we love doing this. We have a like ranch dressing recipe that we absolutely love, and we started doing it when we were going dairy free, and we actually prefer it to store-bought ranch. And so if we want ranch on anything now, we just make our own and we mix it up and we put it in these jars with the pourable lid, and then we have it in the fridge and we just use it on pretty much anything that we want that extra dressing flavor on. So we'll do it on our salads, we'll do it over burrito bowls, or use it for grilled chicken and dip grilled chicken in. We use it with veggies, things like that. That it just makes it really easy because it's homemade, it's better flavor, it's better ingredients, and we can use it on multiple meals throughout the week. So that just makes it really easy to use jars for homemade dressings. And tip number 7 is to use your jars for quick freeze and thaw options. Now, I will have a little caveat here is that you have to make sure that you leave enough headspace on the jar so that you leave room for expansion when the contents inside freeze. So be careful about that and make sure you're paying attention to what types of jars you're throwing in the freezer, or not throwing in the freezer, placing in the freezer. Be careful about that. But things like leftover pasta sauce or the pizza sauce that comes in the glass jars, what we've been doing is like we don't use it all in one go. So I just put the jar directly in the freezer. And then when we're going to be using it the next time, I just take that jar out of the freezer and I put it in the fridge the day before. It gives it time to thaw out, and then it's ready to go for the next time. And we're not having any waste. We don't have to use any like plastic baggies or anything like that to freeze any of the leftovers. We're just putting those jars directly into the freezer, and then we pull them out and put them in the fridge when we want to actually use it. And that has been working really great for us. We have had no broken jars that way, but if you are concerned about it, then you definitely don't have to use this tip. But it's been working really well for us so far. So that is just a really quick run through of 7 tips that you can utilize. And obviously, there are a lot of them here. I went through them really quickly just so that this wouldn't be like a 2 hour long episode. I don't want you to have to sit through that, but I wanted to start giving you some options to think through like how you could utilize jars to make your meal planning routine easier. We want to make things easier on ourselves. So having this like brainstormed list is going to start getting your juices flowing on what little tweaks you could make throughout the week to simplify this routine. So if you want like I would say to just get started with just 1 or 2 and think about ways that you could use the jars that you have on hand or the next ones that you come across and see how you can utilize them and how you like it. So maybe it is even just grabbing a couple of jars and prepping just like 1 or 2 things for this week or for next week. Maybe you just chop a bunch of onions and then put those in one jar, and then chop a bunch of lettuce and make sure it's nice and cleaned and chopped, and then put that in the other jar and use it throughout the week and just see how it goes. See how you like it. See if you actually use the chopped items and see if it just makes things a little bit easier. And then maybe next week you can add one more thing and just continue to simplify your life, because that is a great thing when we can start learning these tips and tricks on how we can simplify things. So, I will do a really quick recap for you on those 7 ways to utilize mason jars in your meal planning routine. Is number 1, use them for dry goods in your pantry so you know when to restock and label them if you want to. Number 2, use for prepped produce to help make it last. Number 3, prep easy breakfasts. Number 4, prep grab and go meals for your lunches. Number 5, do quick pickling or sides to enhance your meals. And number 6 is add homemade dressings, and then they can last for a week or two, and you can use those pourable lids, which are awesome. And number 7 is use them for quick freeze and thaw options. And I hope this makes meal planning so much easier for you. Did you love that episode or learn something useful? If so, would you do me a huge favor? My goal is to grow this podcast and help as many women as I can break free from the overwhelm so they can truly enjoy their life. The best way for me to do this is for you to leave a 5-star written review on your podcast app and to share this episode with a friend or in your Instagram stories. I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.